Game 5 tonight, Wild in Dallas to take on the Stars. All our coverage will begin as soon as we wrap up at 6:30 tonight. Opening face-off scheduled for about 7:10. There will be Wild fan line apparently after the game as well. Wes Walz is going to help us as we speak to sort of, I guess, set the scene for what we might expect tonight and his own observations from the twists and turns of this particular series. I mentioned that. Thanks for joining again, and we'll get you out of here on time because I know you have some other duties. I've mentioned this before, and I don't know if you and I have spoken about it. Part of the reason deep down I, more than the big dance, love the Stanley Cup playoffs, the NBA playoffs, is the best of 7 concept because games build upon themselves. The story, it's a story with as many as 7 chapters. And how teams adjust, how coaches adjust, what players say in between games to challenge either themselves or the other teams. To me, it becomes a lot richer because it's 2 teams going at it, sick of seeing each other game after game. How did you view it when you were a player?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. How would I view it? To be honest with you, I always frowned upon giving the other team any bulletin board material at all. That was the way I always felt the best way to go about it. You just never wanted to give the other team any reason to play harder than they're already going to play. But, it didn't take long. I think was it game 2, Dan, Marcus Foligno said after the game something about their 5-on-5 play and they don't want to play 5-on-5 against us. It's the storylines and adjustments are always something that's interesting to me too, because I still kind of watch. I mean, obviously I played, but I coached for a few years too, and I always kind of watch the games back as a coach. And I think as the series tends to go on, whether it's basketball or hockey or whatever the sport may be in a best of 7, the adjustments become a little bit less and less as you learn a little bit more about the team. And if there is any adjustments, they oftentimes are very, very subtle where you would hardly see it and you have to look hard and you got to listen to sound. One interesting adjustment that I thought Coach John Hines made, and we're going to touch on it in the pregame show here tonight, is he had mentioned after Game 3 that if there was anything that they could do better in Game 3, and he subtly said he talked about just triggering pucks, getting pucks into the front of the net a little bit earlier, a little quicker. And that's basically code word for just we got to get more pucks on net and get them on net quick. So 2 of the 3 goals yesterday, Dan, 2 days ago, 2 of the 3 goals were shots from the point where the defenseman didn't dust off the puck. They didn't go D to D at the top of the zone. They just got them on net quick. We got a nice bounce on the one off of Miro Heiskanen, but the game winner was exactly what John Hines had talked about. So we're going to talk about it a little bit in the pregame show, but it's always interesting. It is very interesting. So,
to your point about what Foligno has said, and we talked a lot about this yesterday with Russo, for the series, the Wild are +6 when it's 5-on-5, -5 on the power play. So I don't want to oversimplify looking ahead to tonight's game, but is it simply a matter of limiting the opportunities that the Stars will have on the power play and indeed just playing these guys 5-on-5 as much as you possibly can?
Yep. I have no problem with you oversimplifying it, Dan, because I would. And I mean, we're going to sit down through this series, 7 games, and break down different things and stats and numbers. And having been close to these 4 games and watched them closely, listen to the sound, watching games back the next day. It's something that, it's a 7-game series, and I kind of lost my train of thought there a little bit, Dan, where I was going. What were we talking about?
We were just talking about, like I said, the fact is Foligno has kind of been vindicated on the 5-on-5. On the other hand, you could say to Foligno, well, but that's all the more reason don't take dumb penalties then, man, because then that gives them the advantage that they're looking for.
Yeah, and we don't have an answer. I mean, we just have not had an answer at all for their power play. We tried different things. We still struggle a little bit in the face-off circle. Yep. That's the biggest issue for me on the Minnesota Wild penalty kill. But we've got to stay out of the box. Dan, the 2 wins that we've had, we've averaged 3 power plays for our opponent, and the 2 games that we've lost, we've averaged 6.5. I mean,
there it is.
You don't need to be rocket science to figure it out.
That's very true.
It's not hard. It's not hard.
Translate for us. I had some fun with this yesterday. That Zuccarello maybe is the most underpaid player on the Wild roster, because we keep being told anything that's gone wrong is basically because he's not been available. Whether it is the Wild's power play, whether it is triggering Kaprizov in the right way. So is he that valuable? What makes him this engine that is so important? And give me some examples of elsewhere where you think that the Wild might have missed him, because the word is he's going to be back in the lineup tonight.
Yeah, there's a good chance he'll be back in the lineup tonight. Well, you can just look back at the season, the regular season this year. I believe we have a win percentage of 68% when he's in the lineup and 52% in the 20 games that he's missed this season. So that's not nothing.
No.
The chemistry that him and Kaprizov have had for 6 years is special. It really is. And he's not a young man anymore. I mean, he's closer to 30. He's closer to 39, Dan, than he is 38. I was just looking at his birthday to see if he just turned 38. No, he's 200 days into 38, and it's I think he had 54 points in 59 games. He's a gamer. He really is a gamer, and he's going to make Kaprizov a lot more dangerous. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you last time when I was on. Zuki wasn't playing that game too. He was not playing in the game that I before when I spoke with you last time. But his ability to transport the puck when he plays with Kirill, Dan, Kirill doesn't have to have the puck on his stick. He's going to move around the ice and try to get open in good spots on the ice, and that's going to make him more dangerous. The reason he hasn't been he's still got 6 points in 4 games. Let's not discount that. And I thought he was probably the best forward in Game 4 for the Wild, Kirill Kaprizov. But when he plays with Zuccarello, he's harder to check because you don't know where he's at. And then when you finally find him, he's got the puck on his stick, and there's separation from other players because Zuki has found him. So he's an important person in that locker room. He does not wear an A or a C, but I can tell you he's very, very respected in that locker room. I know you're a big basketball fan, and I'm watching the Wolves pretty closely too here, and I would consider him a player very similar to a guy like Mike Connolly that was playing with the Timberwolves. He has that kind of impact in the locker room.
Cerebral. It's not just about what he can physically do, but his understanding of the game and giving and taking advantage of little things that he picks up just because he's a student of it.
Yeah, just smarter than everybody else.
Yeah,
I mean he's not the fastest guy. I will say he's very, very quick in like a 15, 20-foot burst. He's really, really quick, but not the fastest guy. Thinks the game better than anybody else. Has seen a lot. Has experience in the playoffs, and he's been around a long, long time. And, getting him back in the lineup is just, Dan, it's a very, very big boost to this team.
What was it like? Did you enjoy playing on the road in the playoffs?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously I love playing at XL Energy, Grand Casino Arena, it's called now, but I mean, I don't know, Dan. There's actually a stat. There's a stat, I think, in the last 10 years in the Stanley Cup playoffs that the road team has won like between 58 and 62% of the series in the NHL, which is incredible. And I think the reason for it is, I don't know, I just think NHL players just love the us versus the world mentality. And when, the building is going crazy, and there's just so much pressure to win at home, especially those first 2 games, Dan. You've played 82 games, you got home ice, and, in order to hold serve, you got to win both those games. So it puts a lot of pressure on the home team. And, I always loved playing on the road. I just did. When you score a big goal and there, you could hear a pin drop around the rink. It was amazing. It was amazing. And it's something that I always relished. And I think this Minnesota Wild team does as well. And, you look at you look at the goaltender Wally, some of his numbers on the road, his splits in his career, and I know it's a short career as a rookie, but he played some games last year. His splits are even better on the road than they have been at home in his career, and I think that has a lot to do with just him being at ease, being on the road.
Let's stick with Wally here for a second, because obviously before the season began, the goaltender talk was everything, right? It was which way is the Wild going to go? What should they do? Do they have to make the call that ultimately that they ended up making? And now it's almost as if no one's even talking about the position in terms of the idea of maybe making a change, because it's been his series, right? I mean, there's and obviously both goaltenders have been very good. Overall, I think it is a reminder, and you mentioned home road, some of that may have to do with just a goaltender, changing everything, tipping a game in favor of the road team. But he has been as good as you could have hoped, right? Given his experience and given the circumstance.
Yeah, he's been incredible. He's been so excellent in this series, and he played great in game 1 and game 2, but it has a feel to me, Dan, that he's getting even more confident as the series is going on, and that's not good news if you're the Dallas Stars. We're going to play about 30 seconds of sound on the pregame show, and it's Brock Faber just talking. He was asked something about when you have a goaltender playing as confidently as he is, what kind of impact that can have on the bench, in the locker room. And he just went on and just talked about how important it is to have a goalie that feels great about his game. And you can just tell, Dan, that he oozes confidence. It's just seeping out of him. I had a chance to meet him this summer. I have my Wes Walz, Minnesota Wild Hockey School.
Mm-hmm.
Cheap plug here, wild.com/hockey school, if anybody's listening. We still have a few spots available in August, but he came out, Dan, last summer, and this was after you did not have a great season last year, and signed autographs for our kids. He was amazing with the kids. He stayed an extra 30 minutes. He's very mature for his age. He's only 22 years old, but you can tell that he's mature in his age. He's talked about how hard he's trained during the summer. He's talked about how he's changed his diet. And he's mentioned, he was asked, you've played every other game throughout the course of the season. Are you getting tired? He was asked after the last game, 2 back-to-back overtime games, one of them double overtime. He said, no, my body feels great. I trained really hard this summer. I took great care of my body, and I feel unbelievable in these big moments. So all the hard work and discipline that he put in the summer has paid off. And I can tell you, I heard stories about him. We all know how talented he was. He was drafted in the first round, Dan, but he was drinking. I heard he was drinking 12 Diet Cokes a day over in Sweden when he was a young boy, and that became part of his, part of his life. So he had to get over that. And if you want to be a great athlete, you can't be drinking 12 Diet Cokes a day unless your name's John Daly.
That's another story.
But anyway, it's been great, and just to watch this young kid develop, it's been awesome.
Last question, and we'll get you out of here. Does the winner of tonight's game win the series? Is this the game?
I think so. Whoever wins this game, the other team's got to win 2 in a row. I think the record game 5 when the series in the NHL is 2-2, I believe in its history, is like 79 or 80% chance that the team that gets game 5 is goes on to win the series. I think that number, to be perfectly honest with you, Dan, in this series probably closer to 85 or 90, just simply because of the way these two teams defend. And if they get a lead, and the Wild and Dallas Stars, there's just 5-on-5. It's a war in the paint in both zones. So, tonight's game is it's an obvious take, but it's pretty close to everything.
Have a great broadcast tonight. We appreciate the help as always, and I hope we can keep this thing going.
Thanks, Dan.
Appreciate you. Wes Walz, these days hockey analyst, former player, done a little of everything in the hockey community, and we always appreciate the insight that he brings to the broadcast. If you have a reaction, hit the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line 64686. We went a little long, But let's get caught up. So you want to do the bonus bucks right now?
Bonus bucks, of course. It's our national cash contest. Thank you, BigDeck.com. 4 o'clock keyword is coin. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword coin.
If I'm doing my math right, and I rarely am, the last time in Minnesota Wild playoff history, I may be the only time that it took a 3-2 series lead was going all the way back to the 2015 postseason, 11 years ago. We're playing the Blues.
Yeah, last time we won a series.
Last time we won a series, exactly right. And then we got swept after that by the Blackhawks. We went up 3-2 at St. Louis with a 4-1 win, and then came back here and won the series in 6, right? We won 4-1 on Sunday, April 26th of 2015. So it's been a long time since we've even had a chance, because if we win tonight, we're obviously up 3-2. We've been up 2-1 a few times, and we won the first game of a series a few times, but we've not been up or had a chance to be up 3-2 in quite some time. And I threw the cliched question at Wes about, does the winner tonight win the series? He leaned that way. I don't even know how strongly I feel about that. I know the percentages are that you win this game and you win the series. I just look for history, for something new. And in this case, once again, like in 2015, it opens the door to coming back home after you won the Game 5 on the road, like they did against St. Louis, and then ending it. A great opportunity, home crowd, festive atmosphere, the whole bit, right? That's what you're looking for.
That's what we had back in 2015.
That's it.
It was a weekend game. I want to say Sunday afternoon.
It was
Game
Sunday.
6.
Yes.
And it was as fun and festive a day at the building formerly known as the X, GrandCasinoArena.com, that we've had. Because they were in good shape pretty much all afternoon.
Top performer in that game, by the way? Our guy Dubnik.
I was going to say Dubes, right?
Dubes, yeah.
Has to be Dubnik.
Frequent contributor to the Bumper to Bumper program.
He was great.
Yeah, he was outstanding.
I see him bopping around mite rinks all the time.
And then, unfortunately, we lost 4-3, 4-1, 1-0, and 4-3 to the Blackhawks in the second round of the Western Conference playoffs. One other quick callback as we try to get caught up. Don't forget Johnny Athletic in about 1 hour. We were talking with Seifert about the question of hitting home runs versus doubles and in the draft as it pertains to the first-round pick. And a texter out of the 218 area code mentioned that the Vikings would have been under the same no draft equity pressure if they had dinked and dunked at 18, swung for a double. So why not swing for the fences if that is your plight? Well, the way I would put it, and the way I tried to put it to that listener is, by most accounts, the safety was a Thieneman that the Bears ended up taking. There is no such thing as sure, but he's pretty close to being at least a starter. Maybe, depending on who you want to believe, a transcendent back end of the defense guy. There's some people who think he's got a chance to be special, but he's not likely to wash out due to an injury history or anything else. So that's the distinction. Obviously, you're trying to go through the entire draft to get doubles, but your best chance, I think, even if you're picking where the Vikings are picking in the first round, you're picking it at that spot. What was it, 18?
Yep.
That's a guy who's going to be a player in the league. Whether he'll end up being a star or not, we don't know. But we know he fills a position. As it turns out, it's a position you need as well, which was, to me, a bonus. But he's considered a very good player. So that's why I don't necessarily agree with the listener here regarding, either way, they're going to be under the same pressure. Yes. What you're trying to avoid is a washout, a greater chance at a washout if you have a history of washouts. If you have a history of succeeding, then I think it's easier to say, we got a lot of good young players on this roster. We've filled a lot of spots. We're going to go for this guy, knowing that there's a risk, and he might end up being nothing but injured his whole career. That's the distinction at least I'm trying to make. Now, you can make the argument that Seifert made, which is, well, you go for the doubles later. Yeah, but I don't want to.
Worse batting counts.
That's
worse counts.
That's true.
I mean, you're going from a hitter's count to much more mixed.
Exactly. The chances of any organization hitting doubles later as the draft goes on gets tougher and tougher. The best teams do, right? They steal players. They go, they're really good between rounds 3 and 5, whatever the case may be. But that to me is the distinction that I would make. Knowing full well that this guy, if he's healthy, everybody seems to indicate has a chance to be. I heard your guy, who was it? Who's the former Alabama coach? Saban?
Yep.
I mean, he just was effusive. And I think this was even before he was drafted, effusive in his praise of what he represents if he's healthy. But, Kevin mentioned it now. You've had 3 situations already. You've had 2 surgeries already. Maybe it's going to be one of those stories we look back on and say he got it behind him.
Right.
He had 15 years in the league. It's certainly possible. But as much as I kind of was yawning at the safety before the draft just because everybody was naming it, here's what bugs me. Tell me if you think I'm wrong here. If the Vikings had drafted Thieneman with that pick and not gone for the quote-unquote home run, what do you think the media consensus would have been? It would have been, not sure that he's a superstar, but he's a really solid player, and you can plug him right in. And you know what? The Vikings needed that. They needed that kind of stability that a player like that represents, that there isn't a great variance in opinion on this player, and there's no history from an injury standpoint that would indicate be a problem. It's like, sometimes is that playing it safe? No, that's just being smart. That's what we would be hearing.
Yes, we would.
That's the irony of this.
The one phrase you left out was, maybe doesn't have a high ceiling, but his floor is higher than most.
Yes.
That's one of the cliches that I really like.
It all depends, I guess, on whose ox is being gored.
By the way, doesn't mean that everybody would be wrong about that either.
No.
It's just, we all get kind of caught up in the same thing.
In the same thing, because that's what we hear that comes out of there, and because they're going to put the best face on it, which I get, but I still think it's okay to push back a little bit once in a while. Bottom of the hour pause. A lot to get to between now and 5. As I mentioned, top 5 at 5 coming up. And we'll have Johnny back from Denver. We'll see what the mood was like last night and what he expects from his favorite basketball team come Thursday night, when the Wolves, of course, will try to put Denver out of its misery. Question is, can they do it with the obvious injury issues? Stay tuned. Rhetoric is definitely being lowered. We've all were warned once again in the wake of another assassination attempt to let's just bring it down a notch or 2. This is our last chance. Here's an example of the rhetoric that, the temperature being lowered. This is from a law school professor at Georgetown. If Obama had a son, he'd attack the White House Correspondents' Dinner like Cole Allen.
Okay, calm down.
That's lowering the temperature on all of this.
Is that
that's
like a
happening
soft
right now.
simmer? Where are we right now?
I don't have any idea.
Is it boiling?
It just got my.
Is it just warm?
Got
or
my
is it
attention.
simmering?
By the way, let's not get absurd, though. I'm not exactly a Jimmy Kimmel apologist. Anybody who listens to this show knows that. But the notion that Kimmel was, quote-unquote, inciting violence, calling for Trump's assassination, when he made that age joke, which, by the way, was before the event, which we can talk about whether you thought the joke hit or whether you liked it, but had absolutely zero to do with any of this discussion. So again, if you're a righty and you were frustrated by the attempts you thought during the Biden administration to stick their noses in places they shouldn't when it comes to speech, etc., try to be consistent a little bit. And if you are being consistent, you can't possibly applaud this notion, you should fire his ass, get him out of there. And even now, the notion that the FCC is going to start investigating again. Come on, man. That's why a lot of this stuff, none of it becomes all performance to such a degree that we don't really get anywhere in issues that have some substance. I'm not here to defend Jimmy Kimmel, but I am here to say I don't want the long arm of government getting involved in shutting somebody up or knocking them off the air or whatever the case may be. And I know, again, this is another one. It all depends on whose ox is being gored story. But come on, you're pretending if you attempt to connect the notion that that one thing has anything to do with the other, because it just does not. Speaking also of lowering the temperature, and this goes back a ways. This was before the assassination attempt, and we talked about it on Enough Said. I think it was last Friday night, if I'm not mistaken. And I had missed the story. Maybe it was just a blur and I didn't pay attention to it. But Star Tribune had a story by Dino Winter under the headline, Mayor Jacob Fry wows the national media, but reviews are mixed back home. And it lays out what's been a fairly obvious schism between the far left progressives, both on the city council and just in the city of Minneapolis, and Jacob Fry. The notion that he is some sort of crackpot righty, which is rather laughable. And now, I'm not here to say Jacob Fry is above criticism at all, but there is something rather precious of one of the council members suggesting that the mayor should do more than give grandiose speeches. It's like, are you listening to yourself? Are you aware of what we've talked about for months on this show, the level of performance that goes on in the Minneapolis City Council? But none of that is what I want to really spend as much time on as this. We come to find out, apparently, let me get to the exact passage here, because it is it's pretty interesting. If I can scroll through the story. And by the way, the story leaves out that nationally the mayor is getting, a lot of attention, and there's some resentment here apparently that he shouldn't get as much attention as he does. But apparently there was a performative mayor contest. And again, look up irony, but we'll leave that alone for the moment. And at the performative mayor contest, people lined up to beat a Jacob Fry piñata. Is this real? Does this fall into the classification of lowering the rhetoric? Now, again, it's described here as about as wholesome fun as you can get. Yeah, here's the quote. Like the most wholesome way you can really hate someone. And I'll say again, in this climate that we are in, I'll ask the same question that one of the council members, Councilmember Palmisano, mentioned. She asks this question. If someone had beaten a piñata of Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, would people be okay with it? We know the answer to that question. That's a bad message. We understand no one's being hurt, but that's the kind of message that will fuel the crackpots. You might not be willing to do anything about it, do anything violent, but is that really where we are? And again, he's not beyond criticism, but the notion that this is how you express your frustration in 2026, presumably as an adult, we're going to have a Fry piñata and then we're going to beat on it? Does that lower the rhetoric of anything that we're talking about? I don't know. I have absolutely no working idea. But so the signs are good that I think everybody's getting calmer.
We got the message.
I think everybody has gotten the message, even though, in fairness, that, of course, took place before the assassination attempt. I got one more, and I, do you know about she's, I think, out of Duluth. Her name is Sharon McMahon. She's described as a best-selling author of inspirational nonfiction. I didn't know anything about her until this story broke. And she apparently was supposed to be the keynote commencement speaker at Utah Valley State University. Remember, I'm reading from the New York Times story on this subject. A controversy over free speech was not how Utah Valley University had hoped to end an academic year that traumatized the campus and shocked the nation when the conservative activist Charlie Kirk was assassinated there in September. But that's exactly what happened when it invited Sharon McMahon, a best-selling author of inspirational nonfiction, to be its keynote commencement speaker. In fact, apparently McMahon was no stranger to Utah Valley herself, having spoken there before, had apparently a fan in the university's president who thought Ms. McMahon's message about unsung heroes in American history would be healing. She's a force of nature and a force for good. But ultimately, there was such pushback to the announcement that she was going to speak that she has been, do they call it disinvited, uninvited, whatever the case may indeed be. And what was her crime? Well, her crime was what she had to say in the wake of the Kirk assassination. The murder that was horrific and should never have happened does not magically erase what was said or done. But if you were a Charlie Kirk fan, you might not realize why there is so much backlash to posts eulogizing his death. What I thought she did quite well, in fact, the first thing I think she wrote was, I'm really so upset that this happened. This isn't the kind of America that I want to live in. She did occasionally later write posts about some of Kirk's, what she describes as insulting remarks, later to explain what she describes as the polarized response to his death. I was encountering many people, she told the New York Times, who were saying, I don't get why this is such a big deal. Who was he? And then there were the people who were ultimately absolutely devastated. She said she counted herself among the latter category. I was gutted. Now, again, we're in this hypersensitive world in which we believe we are outraged by cancellation unless we love cancellation. And in this case, there are people celebrating the cancellation because it serves their purposes in this case. If you read what she said in the pantheon of things that would be classified by me and many others as completely and utterly over the line and celebratory, all of her commentary is very nuanced and very specific more than anything else about disavowing the tragedy of it, that there's no excuse for that level of tragedy. And yet, now she's on the outside looking in. So I ask you, if we had consistency on when we decide that somebody needs to be disinvited, I'd be okay with it, but we really, really don't. So Charlie Kirk fans, apparently among those who have stood up and said, how dare you can't possibly have this individual there, even though she did nothing at all to celebrate the murder, the senseless murder, which we talked about at the time of Charlie Kirk in this new, it feels like new era where if we're not condoning this stuff, we're kind of, elbowing each other and saying, well, yeah, I don't like it, but I kind of get it, or we openly just mock it and ridicule it and laugh about it. And to me, she's being wronged because what she did, I think, was utterly inbounds. And this is what gets difficult when people say, unless we lower the rhetoric, we all lose. Well, I would say, regardless of whether the rhetoric can be connected to any violent acts, none of it's very helpful. None of it is I feel like, very serious. But in this particular case, this is not someone who is espousing violence. This wasn't even anybody who was celebrating the violence. And the fact that we can't see, if you're a Charlie Kirk fan, you can't see past that. I don't think anybody wins in this environment, because what the Kirk people are saying is exactly what I just said at the start of this interview or discussion. Is we're told all the time we got to lower the rhetoric because it can lead to violence, and we've seen that we've seen that exactly play out. In other words, I want to shut her up, when in fact in this case that's manipulation. She is not going out of her way in any way of condoning the violence of the act itself, of the assassination, not even close to that. But effectively, as a strategy, this is now what's being used to shut people up. And that's why none of this is easy to say, yeah, everybody just lower the temperature because nobody wins in this environment. I don't disagree with that, but I don't trust always the people who are saying that, because they're not always saying it for altruistic reasons. They're saying it because they want the other side to shut up more than anything else. But again, I don't see anything that I've read that crosses the line in terms of what she laid out in the wake of that murder.
Am I misremembering that a big part of the Charlie Kirk appeal and popularity and bit was we talked to everybody?
100%.
I'm going to put my chair over here.
That was even what a number of people who disagreed with him credited him with, exactly that he didn't just ignore, quote unquote, ignore. I'll come and you want me coming? I'll come. We'll engage.
Right. Say what you want.
Yes.
And then we'll talk about it. And those are the videos I remember watching, certainly after his death. Like she said, not that I would agree with him on much. I'm guessing I probably wouldn't. But I thought that was part of his whole popularity and really one of his talents or skills, and certainly the way that he tried to operate, which that's a little ironic.
It states the case. You're 100% right. Ms. McMahon said she felt like the victim of an organized cancellation campaign, the kind she said Mr. Kirk probably would have opposed. She defended her deleted post, noting she had used Mr. Kirk's words, "There's nothing I said that I believe was incorrect or I feel that I need to apologize for." But pulsing underneath the outrage was a sense that feelings were too raw for any speaker who had criticized Mr. Kirk after his killing, and that the choice showed at the very least insensitivity over the trauma on campus that year. The campus chapter of Kirk's organization, Turning Point USA, called the invitation hurtful and callous. They're just laughing in our face. Sure, maybe they have the right to make a dumb decision, he said at the university. This is a co-host of the Charlie Kirk podcast. We have our free speech to criticize how stupid this decision is. Maybe the answer is then, because he's right, they do have the right to criticize it. It goes back to whether the people in authority have the cojones to hang with the original invitation. Now, the comeback to that might be they get into that area, that murky area of, we can't guarantee safety. And given what has already taken place on our campus,
right,
then maybe we can't take that particular chance. That might be the comeback to it. And
I know that was on just reading this story. That's what they said they came.
Yes, that was the conclusion they came to.
Well, with each other.
Yes.
They talked about security concerns, and that was a big part of it.
And sadly, this has come up on a lot of cases where there have been Jewish speakers who have been invited to whatever the event may be. Several of these in which ultimately the decision was made. Regarding the Palestinian issue, there's too much volatility. We can't really be sure of safety as a result. And there was also, wasn't there, I think it was a soccer match involving a team from Israel where similarly, this was in England, I believe, the decision was made that fans couldn't go simply because they couldn't guarantee safety in that situation. And to a certain extent, you say, aren't you kind of letting the bad guys win in that environment? All this is the backdrop that makes it, I think, more difficult to declare in these absolutes that again, especially, you're going to hear right now a very different viewpoint from people who were pro Charlie Kirk than they would in a very if the individual who was speaking was also controversial, but was more likely to espouse what they want to hear. And then they would say, well, what's the university scared of? What's the problem? I thought this was all about free speech. So the big symposium we need to have, which we won't have, regarding lowering the rhetoric, really starts with that there has to be some consistency to it rather than the gotcha game. And I've already given you a couple of examples of why I said what I said yesterday, that the warnings are meaningless. They sound good, and they make us feel better that, okay, here's another gut check time for us to realize that this stuff, there are people who will carry this language, this incendiary language, to places that might include violence. And therefore, we have to really think twice before we offer some of the loaded commentary that we do. That's not going to stop. I don't think there's anything it's going to stop that at this point, unless, as I said, there's more of a willingness for everybody to kind of play by the same rules. Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is open at 64686. 612 guy Bernie in Lionel Lakes writes, Dan, you really need to get Sharon on your show. She's a former government teacher who most often states the facts without taking a side. She'd be a great guest for you. If you can get her, I think she would be an outstanding guest. The Star Tribune, I think yesterday, had a story with her too. Of course, there is consistency in who is uninvited. Anyone with an opinion that contradicts yours is uninvited. That is literally it. Yeah, that's basically the way it works. But I'm still trying to get a handle on the piñata thing. Had you heard about that other than from the story? Maybe I missed it.
No, I think just from you.
I mean, I know there's been plenty of anti-Fry vitriol. And again, I'm here for, he's not immune. He should be criticized just like anybody else in politics. But I'm just telling you again, speaking of consistency, as the city council member mentioned, do you realize the hubbub there would be if there were individuals beating on an Ilhan Omar piñata? There'd be endless stories on it. I mean, to the Star Tribune's credit, there's a story here, although they were actually quoting, I think it was something from an NPR piece, but they at least mentioned it, brought it to light. But are you serious that would be we're just having good, innocent fun? In this environment, there's not a chance in hell it would be received that way, nor probably should it. But the decision is made that in this case, no, this is too important, and we're having fun with this, and have a sense of humor. There's nobody on the progressive side that would have a sense of humor about a piñata if the target was somebody else instead of the face of, or whatever it was, of Mayor Fry. I wonder what it looked like. Is it like when it's a Fry piñata? Is it like,
I'm not going to say anything.
Is it Fry's head? Is it his upper body? How do you
It's probably just his head, but I don't know.
Because what is a piñata usually? It's like an animal, right?
Usually,
is that it?
It can be anything.
Anything, yeah. A Fry piñata. That's where we are. It's just there's a city with all kinds of issues. I mentioned on the TV show, the great irony of this is, it looks as if the Minneapolis City Council longs more than anything else to be San Francisco. And the irony is, San Francisco doesn't even want to be San Francisco anymore. They're making all kinds, we quoted from that major New York Times piece, making all kinds of changes when it relates to crime in the streets, drug issues, etc. And it's almost like, well, then, no, we want to be that. That's what's going to, you want to talk about performance? That looks cool to us. That's what we're looking for. They're over it in San Francisco. And yet that apparently is the direction that we want to head. Top 5 at 5 will include?
Big game for the Wild. The Wolves lose, and the Twins back on the right side of the win column.